Channel 5 Network. This is MorningLine with Nick Beres.
Good morning, everyone. Thanks for joining us on MorningLine. Nick Beres here with you on a Thursday. And as always, hey, we've got a good show. Have I ever said we've had a bad show? I suppose going back over the history of this program, there have been some shows that weren't as good as others, but this is a good one. I think they all are in general, and I hope you join in the conversation. This morning, we're going to be talking about students, their performance, some of the underserved communities. Sometimes when those so-called report cards come out for schools, and we're going to look at maybe here in Metro, they'll talk about advances and progress, and that's a good thing. But that's across the board, and it doesn't always speak for some of the schools where some of the youngsters, for a variety of reasons, are still lagging far behind. And if you're not able to read, if you're not able to do some of the basic skills you need to, I think, succeed in life at that early stage, you're doomed later on. And that's why it's such an important topic, and there are some very special people that are involved with trying to make sure that every kid has a fair fighting chance moving forward. We're going to talk about that and take some of your phone calls this morning. She was on with us just a few months ago. Sonya Thomas is with us, Nashville PROPEL Executive Director. Really good to have you on. Nice to see you again.
Nice to be here.
Well, thanks for coming. And just for folks who maybe missed last time you were on the program or are unfamiliar, remind folks what PROPEL is all about.
Okay, so PROPEL stands for Parents Requiring Our Public Education System to Lead. It is a parent-led, parent-organized movement. And we represent Black and brown students who attend or are zoned to some of the lowest performing schools right here in Nashville.
Okay, and when you came on last time, there was, the reports out there about, some of the progress that has been made. And certainly there has been across the board. But I think what you talked about, and you gave me some statistics about a few of these schools on the ability of some of these students to read, and it was very disturbing. The point is, those numbers can be deceiving, right? That there's still schools out there that are really lagging behind.
Yeah, we have to humanize those numbers.
Okay.
Like, these are not just numbers or statistics. These are real people. These are our future. These are our little visions. I often talk about when babies are born in the hospital, like I can just visualize dads and moms holding those babies all bundled up and looking at them and thinking about what their future can be and how they can carry on the legacy of our families. And so I think we have to humanize those numbers.
All right, and so the point being, and remind me, what is the status right now as far as PROPEL is concerned with some of those underserved communities? Have we seen the progress that we were hoping for? And I know there's some new numbers from the Metro Schools report. Wanted to get your thoughts on some of the indicator scores right now and how they play out.
So I want to make sure that we give a little grace and think about, okay, we just ended a pandemic.
Right.
But I also want to talk about, before the pandemic, we were in crisis mode. The pandemic, we were in a catastrophic mode, and we're right back at crisis mode. So that's self-explanatory. We're still not where we need to be as far as academic achievement for students in Metro Nashville Public Schools.
Can you give me a couple of examples like you did last time? I mean, and some of them are quite vivid.
Yeah, so I talked about a school in particular, and I'm not going to name the school because I don't want to embarrass the children because the numbers are so bad, because it's not their fault. But we have an elementary school right here in Nashville, in the heart of Nashville, where they have 3 out of 290 students who are reading on grade level.
I mean, that's just stunning to me. 3 out of 200?
290.
90. Meaning that, all right, and these are elementary school students. This is the beginning. This is where it starts. This is the foundation being set. How do you explain that? What is it that's lacking in that school that has created that situation? If you can kind of lay it out. I think we all can kind of guess, but is it resources? I mean, I'm guessing there are teachers there that mean well and are working hard. What is the problem?
I think that one of the things that we can really point to is low expectations. We often use like poverty as an excuse when, poverty should be the main driver for making sure that children have the education that they need and they deserve. We're talking about there could be a resource problem, but there's also a problem with students being overlooked.
Okay.
And there's also an issue.
Just passed on to the next grade?
Just passed on to the next grade, or just not making like literacy a priority. There are some schools right now that are investing in the coaching of literacy in their schools, and I'm going to celebrate that. I am going to celebrate that. But there are others that, that is not a priority in the school, so that's why you see 3 out of 290 students who are not reading on grade level. That is a leadership problem. It's not really a teacher problem. And I want to make sure that people understand that we need educators in order to move the needle. This is a Titanic type thing. And so to move the boat and turn the boat around, we need great educators, but we need to invest in making sure that our educators are taught how to teach students how to read. That has never happened before. And I'm going to give you an example. I always like to give receipts.
Absolutely. Well, that's what makes it.
Yeah,
that
most of us know educators. Like, I have educators in my family, and I have friends who are educators. I want everybody under the sound of my voice to go and ask them what is the name of the college course they took to teach students how to read. They're going to tell you that they haven't. I had a principal to come to my house over the holidays for some cake. I had made a homemade caramel cake, and I had this discussion with him. And I asked him. I said, "What was the name of the course that you took to teach students how to read?"
And he said,
"I didn't."
So, but okay, now I know, and I have several friends, and I'm not an educator, who have gone through college that are now teaching at elementary and high school levels. When you get your teaching certificate and your education background, I mean, all right, I guess if you're training to be a teacher, what goes into that? I assume part of it is, phonics and going through a course that says this is how you're going to instruct children how to read. This is what you're going to have to teach them if you're dealing with mathematics or social studies, right? I mean, have you looked into that? Are there no courses, or are they not taking them?
So Tennessee did something that is, I like that's very bold.
I'd love, by the way, to hear from some teachers out there. If there's someone watching who could call in and talk about how they did learn to teach reading, because apparently it's being done, because we read, we've learned somehow. It's being done, though, right? But I'm sorry to interrupt you.
It's not being done in a way to make sure that we capture every student background, every student individual capacity.
But that's hard sometimes. There's outliers, and you have to serve the general body. You want to try to help everyone. But
well, if we focus on the science of how the brain works, we will touch. Look, 99% of all people can be taught how to read.
Okay, yeah.
And so if we make sure that we are teaching foundational skills, every student, I don't care about their background, I don't care about their disability, will be able to read. The way that we're teaching reading now has a lot of memorization, and there's only so much that the brain can memorize, right? And so you may see a little gains like with people being able to memorize certain words, but after a while, that kind of plateaus out, right?
Yep.
And so we want to make sure we're teaching foundational skills. We want to make sure that children understand that sounds make letters. Sounds make the letters.
As you tell me this, you are so right. And again, obviously teachers are learning something. We're going to take some calls here in a minute, but it's really, I just think about how I learned and how my son, and it sounds, and it's parents. I just remember my folks, sitting down and they read me. They read me books. And I remember my mom telling me, "Nick, I want you to read. Okay, turn off the idiot box," which is the TV, is what she'd call the TV. "Turn off the idiot box and read a book." And she goes, by the way, she told me she didn't care what I read. She goes, "Here," she handed me the cereal box. "You want to read the cereal box? Read that, anything, read. But they would work with me. They would work with me. And so I don't know now, there's a lot of parents that don't have the time, especially single parents, maybe to spend as much as they'd like reading with their children. Is that where a lot of kids are learning, or maybe then being failed with parents?
So what has been taught to parents for many years is to read to your children. And that's good. You want to read because you want children to explore. You also want to model it, right? The thing is, that doesn't teach a child how to read.
Okay,
Only 5% of human beings will learn how to read like that. That is why we see such a gap in achievement. I mean, the numbers don't lie, right? This math is mathing. As far as I'm concerned, and as far as research is concerned, right? And so, it is fine to keep reading to your children, but they also must have foundational literacy skills. We're talking about
sounding out words, knowing, how to pronounce certain things.
What the letter says, look, I am a mother who had a son who was struggling.
Okay.
It had nothing to do with his IQ. Okay, and I did all of the things that everyone asked me to do. I even spent my mortgage money at one time, putting him in a University of Knoxville literacy program one summer. And I did what I was asked to do and read to my son, but he still struggled. And when he got to the 7th grade, we found out he was reading on the 2nd grade reading level. Now, I could not really hear when he was reading to me that he had difficulty. He was really having trouble with comprehension. He was having trouble with vocabulary and background knowledge. Right. If you've never been to Paris and you're reading about Paris and there's no Paris in your neighborhood, you're not going to understand what you're reading in a book. Yep. You got to have some background knowledge. So these are things that our educators, our leadership in education have to make sure that they're modeling, that they're taking very serious to make sure they're equipping our educators. These teachers get up every day doing something that they love. Let's make sure, just like we make sure when surgeons go into a surgery room and they know how to use a scalpel, let's make sure that our teachers have everything they need to make sure that every student is success. That is making sure that every student is known.
And as you gave that disturbing number about the one elementary school, 3 out of 290 students are literate or are able to read.
That ain't every parent being a bad parent.
No, I was about to say, obviously.
That can't be.
But do you think it would be stunning to most people to realize, even those who maybe can read a bit and are literate, just how limited many adults out there in life today who really can just barely read. And you know, when I see it sometimes, and I know it's different between reading and comprehension and writing, but I see, you know, on Facebook sometimes people will message me and stuff, and they're all good thoughts and stuff. But the way it's written and the wording and the way it's the vocabulary that's used, you can tell some of these folks had a limited background in the use of words and the comprehension and the understanding, and it has to make life a little more difficult for them.
It is a generational curse. It's a systemic failure. It's not a teacher failure. I want to make sure that we talk about that it's about making sure that we follow the science. This stuff has been researched. Like, I'm not telling you something that people really don't know. Now, people politicize reading. How do you politicize reading? Something that makes us able to be successful. I know millionaires who can't read. It has nothing to do with how smart. So that's why you see people who are able to navigate. I am a struggling reader. I went to nursing school. I went to Tribeca. At one point, before I started this movement, I had a 4.0 at Tribeca. But I was a struggling reader. I would have to read stuff 3 and 4 and 5 times or have discussions about things in order to make sure that I understand. So then I had to do some things that are based on the science to help me. And even now, I still struggle with certain things.
Sure, I do too. I do too, reading certain things. I mean, it really comes down to, I think you hit it on the head for me with reading comprehension. It's one thing to just be able to pronounce and read a word, but then to be able to translate it in your head and comprehend what you're reading and what it means that's the next step. Listen, we got to take a break on that note. When we come back, we'll take some phone calls. We have some folks on hold. We'd love to hear from you. If you're dealing with this situation, if you have a child or a loved one in this situation, we're also going to show you a trailer from a documentary, The Truth About Reading, which I think you are involved with. And it really kind of shows and hits home just the importance of this and where the shortcomings are. It's going to be wonderful, and I'm glad you're part of that. We'll take a break. We'll be back. Kimberly, Brittany, and others will get to your phone calls for our fine guest right after this.